Enlightenment. It is always my honor and pleasure to stop right here and welcome our guests because I know that they are coming with some stuff that I deem very, very expensive. Time. What a beautiful commodity. Many of us have misused our 24 hours that are given to us, to every single creature on this planet. 24 hours has been allotted to us, and how we utilize that will dictate how we create the life that we desire. The other is their journey. That journey houses pain, wisdom, joy, all of it. The beauty and the beast, as they say. But it was that journey that created them to make them who they are today. And so I want to thank you so much, Doc, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. I am excited about this conversation. Introduce yourself to the people.
Ken, thank you very much for the introduction, and it's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Agi Keramidas. I am Greek originally, living in the UK, and my, let's say, most prominent aspect, if I may use that element, because there are many. The one that I will share first, if you will, is that I
Yeah.
am also a podcaster, a podcast host, and that has, and I'm sure we will talk about it. It has really defined my journey as in personal development, in growth, in contribution. It has really changed the path of my life. So there are other, elements, many, but this is podcasting. I mean, and the impact it can make and the difference it can make is what really fills my heart with joy. So it's a real pleasure to be here and speak to you about whatever will
It,
serve your audience the most.
it is an honor to have you because I am a fellow podcaster and I know it has allowed me to grow in such a fashion that I am looking more beautiful in my eyes. And it has given me the opportunity to become humble and to learn about
Mm.
empathy and all the other things that we want from a relationship. I've actually learned as a result of being on this podcast. Doc, I want you to go back because I always tell people that we enter this world through trauma. The birth itself is traumatic. And I think that natural experience, it has a spiritual connotation to it because I believe it is also through trauma that we enter into the spiritual realm because that's just how we are. Sometimes we get a little busy and we need a little tap on the shoulder to say, hey, I need to have a conversation with you. And something happens in our life that causes us to slow down. So, talk to us about your upbringing, your home. I tell people this is the first space of the lab that we hit while we're here on this planet. Talk to us a little about your family upbringing.
It's a very interesting question. So and I agree with you. We have things that we've brought in a way with us, or things that we must resolve, and it is part of our mission or our purpose, if you want, in life. So to
Yes.
answer your question, the what is quite interesting now thinking about it. Well, I grew up in Greece. My parents were loving people. We had a good family relationship.
Hmm.
What is relevant though, and really created a difference later on when I was thinking. Reflecting back at it is when I was in my late teenage years, like say 16, 17, I was
Hmm.
meant, to have to make a decision about my future. What would I become? Which is, I believe,
Hmm.
very, very common. So in my heart and in my desire, as a 16-year-old person, I wanted to go to acting school to become an actor. That was really what was I was passionate about. Uh,
Yeah.
that was when I realized that my parents influenced me to become a dentist instead of that, for many reasons. The
Hmm.
main one, because my mom was a dentist, so she persuaded me. But of course,
Yeah.
these are completely two different careers, two completely different paths in life. And it was, only when I was about 40 years old as a dentist, when I
Hmm.
embarked on the personal development journey, that I looked back at that experience of my teenage years, and I
Yeah.
drew conclusions out of it and how it really shaped my life, and how now I look back at that desire that I had through a different
Hmm.
lens, of course, because it was 25 years afterwards,
Yeah.
and pick up again elements that maybe they were left behind. And I will take a little pause here because I know it's a big
Yeah.
topic.
No, go ahead. That's why we're here. We want to delve into that stuff because I believe, I tell people, it is there where we are initially created. That sometimes I tell people, sometimes it's traumatic, sometimes it's very simple, where it may be just being a conversation with your mom or dad, and they may say something because they're literally busy. Um,
Hmm.
I don't have time right now, and that little child will interpret that statement as, I don't have time to spend with you. I'm busy. I don't, and it becomes a trauma to that child, and it cause them to perceive the world from that lens, and they make decisions based on that. That's why we delve into that stuff, because we
Mm.
pick things up, but we don't know until we began to have this conversation. We see, wait a minute, and then we start putting some things together. So talk to us about it.
Yeah.
We got time. We're okay.
Sure. So you know what? It's I won't use necessarily the word traumatic, but when I
Hmm.
look back and reflected what happened there with me going to dental school, even though I have had no interest or passion as a teenager about
Yeah.
that, what it did for me, and was when I reached, and I will move. I will take us forward in time from that time to make
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
connection,
Yeah.
and that was in
Hmm.
2016. Like I had just finished a master's degree in restorative dentistry, so after 2 years of studying and commitment and lots of
Yeah.
sacrifices, I graduated from that, and I found myself, rather than feeling motivated, and excited about what I had learned and to be able to apply, instead I found myself
Yeah.
confused, unmotivated, like I didn't have any direction, and I didn't have any, desire to
Hmm.
practice the high end stuff that I had been learning. And
Yeah.
that's when in order to find the answers, I started looking into personal development. I started reading some books, going to some seminars, and then I connected some of the dots there, because my
Yeah.
desire to become an actor or do this kind of lifestyle, at that time I
Yeah.
had no idea why it was what it was there. But then
Yeah.
reflecting back at me, it was the desire to become an actor, was a desire that I had inside me for self-expression. To bring
Hmm.
out elements of me that, as an actor, you have the opportunity to, let's say, approach life or topics from different angles based on the person
Yeah.
that you are playing the role. So it's completely, you have the opportunity to have very different perspectives about even the exact
Yes.
same thing. Whereas with the
Yeah.
life that I led and I had a very, you know, straight, or probably the opposite. I don't want to call it narrow vision, but it was quite specific
Structured.
lens,
Yeah.
structured indeed,
Structured.
yeah, of
Yeah.
looking at
Hmm.
things. There was no variety, and the self-expression was not there. And I hadn't realized any of that until that time when I started embarking on this inner self-exploration journey and personal development
Yeah.
that led me to start understanding who I was. before anything
Yeah.
else. And then, of course, that led to, grow it more, and eventually, and the podcast, I will bridge it to that,
Yeah.
was created out of my desire to express myself. And before then, I wasn't, simply put. I had not really expressed myself or my creative aspects in
Yeah.
much of my life. And that led or contributed anyway to that point in my 40s when I was empty and,
Yeah.
directionless.
Yeah. Let me ask
So
you a
thank you
question,
for
Doc.
for allowing me to share it in a way that I hadn't previously. So I appreciate your the probing question or the freedom you allowed me to answer.
Yeah, yeah, this is what we do here. I love that because this is how we get to discover the power that is within us. I want you to let's stay here and circle here for a minute because
Mm,
living that way will constantly be within you, deep within you. Yeah, we call it the subconscious area of our being. Within there, there had to be some type of disturbance because you are now living a structured life, which is totally against your the you of you, if you will. And so there's some I know there's some discomfort, if you will, that while you're accumulating all of this wisdom and knowledge concerning dentistry and all the different things of that, and the strictness of living and thinking and so forth, what was happening to you, Doc? Because inside there's those little tremors of or glimpses,
mm.
if you will, of the times when you realize that thought is coming up, but you kind of suffocate it back down. Talk to us. How did you handle yourself within that transition and that information?
It's you were talking about the discomfort earlier, and I was trying to think how it was expressing itself in my
Yeah,
life. I mean, in a way, the discomfort was at that time expressing itself by me not being satisfied with what I had. And
yeah,
the interesting thing is that in the society I was there in Greece and with my parents, when you were not satisfied with what you had, that was not taken
hmm
as a good thing. So it was, what's wrong with you? Why do you keep on
yeah,
wanting more or different? So it was this kind of mindset at that time,
yeah,
which of course, I know now that there's nothing wrong with wanting more, and actually, that is part of our nature. It is part of our growth as human beings.
yeah,
But yeah, at that time, I had kind of combined the fact that I was unsatisfied, that I was wanting more, with something
hmm
negative. That this is not there's something wrong with me because I'm not content with what I had, and I had a good
yes,
life back then.
yeah,
So I think it was expressing, that was one way it was expressing that
yeah,
discomfort through me. The other way that it was expressing itself was, when things are not satisfying at a deeper level, and we
yeah,
know it. I
yeah,
think we all know it. It's just many of us are
yeah,
not trained to listen to it, to be attuned to that,
yes,
silent whisper inside that speaks the truth of what we want and what is who
yeah,
we are. So at that time, I did not have much of connection with that, and my head was really doing most of the thinking and the analyzing and the decisions, and it was, I went into a spiral of not happy thoughts, which then I was drinking too much at that time. It was really not
yeah,
a healthy situation. At that
Yeah.
time I was young enough and I knew that my body would cope, but when I would look further ahead, a few years ahead, I could only see that
Yeah.
spiraling down more, and that was not a place that I wanted to be. So I'm still explaining this how that discomfort would appear in
Yeah.
my life. I knew that there was something more, something different for
Yeah.
my life, and I just didn't know what it was until I discovered the idea about moving to the UK, which again that was a big change in my life. Living, the life I had in Greece, which was comfortable on the outside but unsatisfied, and moving to the
Yeah.
UK in pursuit of something. I was
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of digressed a lot there, Ken. So I'm not sure
No,
where I
no,
was
no.
going, where I was going with this.
You were going in the right direction, and the reason why I threw that probing question is that it manifests somehow. That
Mm,
discomfort manifests in our behavior because we are not happy. We are not where we are supposed to be, and we know it. And
mhm,
it manifests because we're that voice that is there. um, in many cases, we're not ready for it because it is a journey. It wakes us up to the point where everything has to become new. And so sometimes we're not ready, but it does manifest. And how we handle the manifestation of it, it uh, causes certain behaviors in our life that we have to now deal with as we move forward. So here you are, you've
mm,
graduated, you've done what mom wanted to do, the family is all happy, everyone is smiling, you're a mess, your inside is just eating at you, drinking, and you're looking at it, and this great accomplishment, nothing. You're not the thing inside of you. Now, you said that you began to look to personal development.
mm.
When you picked up those books and began to look, what did you discover?
Phew, so many things. One that comes to mind when you were asking was that my challenges, shall we say, or my questions were not unique to me. That was one thing that initially struck me as wow, there are lots of people that actually have or are in a similar condition or
Yeah.
situation like me. So it was incredible, first of all, to see that there were personality traits that really described me like they knew me. And that was a big
Yeah.
realization for me to understand. And then, of course,
Yeah.
it was when I started looking at my own mental structures, or what is it in there that makes my thinking, my behavior, my emotional states, and there was a particular moment. It was not a moment as such, but it was during an event with Tony Robbins years ago that I had
Yes.
an epiphany, like a limiting belief that I had all my life, that people are not interested in what I have to say. That limiting belief, which I hadn't realized that there was something like that playing at the back of my hand, it became very
Hmm.
apparent that, oh my God, this is what I operate on. It's like a part of my internal dialogue, if you want. So every
Yes.
time until that day, until that event, every time that I would, let's say, meet with someone new, or I was in a social situation, I was always very reserved, very shy, uncomfortable even. And that,
Hmm.
I never knew why I was like that. I thought, that's who I am. I am an introvert, or whatever title
Yeah.
would put me into a category. I had
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
realized that this was not part of who I was. Instead, it was just a behavior which was triggered
Hmm.
by that thought, that limitation that people are not interested
Yeah.
in what I have to say. So,
Yeah.
starting from that foundation, of course, I would be reserved. I would be very hesitant to speak to others. And what happened with that period of time, especially through my personal development journey, was obliterating that belief. Once I realized that there is this thing playing constantly at the back of my mind, I didn't really want
Yeah.
to spend the rest of my life, being afraid to speak to someone in an
Hmm.
elevator, for example. Have this. It was irrational, it was limiting,
Yeah.
and I realized
Hmm.
that it was not who I was. And,
Yeah.
that's when I started speaking, public speaking, and then the podcast at a later stage, because I wanted to break that
Yeah.
shackle, that, that
Yeah.
chain.
Yes. That
Mm,
mindset, because the reason I tell people, Doc, I tell people that the human being, the individual, is designed to meditate. We meditate all day long. Now, it is playing that reel is running within the subconscious mind, and but we're working, we're doing our bills, I mean, our working, our job or whatever. But that thing is behind there, just cooking up a storm and just playing and been playing for years and years, and that limited belief. And when it is identified, like you did, once you identify it, that wait a minute, this is playing back here, I did not know. And the minute that we find that information out, I tell people you'll get two response. One of those will make a statement of faith, I call it. That
mm,
statement of faith, Doc, is that I recognize this. This is not me. I don't want anything that looks like that. The reason why I tell people their statement is faith is now they are going to believe that statement that they just spoke to themselves. And what they're going to do is then take the corresponding actions to bring that statement to pass. The other one is going to see it and go back to sleep. And
mm,
so one is still designing their life by default, and one is about to design their life by purposeful decision making. The
mm,
choice is ours when we get to that space, because that bridge right there, Doc, is one of the most beautiful gifts that we can ever get as a human being on this planet, is to get that recognition as to what that internal tune is playing that have been playing all of our life. Here you are, you got the recognition, you started um, making and taking the steps, the public speaking. That's like, I love that. That's just guts. You decide to say, look, I'm going to let this thing go. So here you are, you jumped out, and you are now embarking on what most people are going to call the walk of faith. You don't know where you're going to land, but I'm walking. I don't, the other picture that I saw, I don't like that picture. I want to create a new picture. So here you are,
mm,
you stepped out. Talk to me as you're now making that transition from your mind, where you're conditioned, where your mind is the lead, if you will, and not your heart. That battle that you, as you began to stand up and talk to people, because we all know that battle is there, you're going to deal with all of the imposter things and all of those things. How did you handle yourself right there, Doc? How did you handle yourself within that internal conversation that you're having with yourself as you're now embarking upon this new journey? It always takes time, and people don't understand. They expect results ASAP. You, it takes time. So talk to us how you make that adjustment. How are you handling it, and as you move forward?
mm. You know what? I will start with what you said about that it takes time. I would say that it's a lifelong thing. It is
Yes, I
whatever
agree.
it is that we will talk about in terms of creating or living a beautiful life, whatever that means for each one of us. There is never a point that you can say now I have attained it and there's nothing
Yes.
left for me. It
Yeah.
is ongoing and there will be ups and
Yeah.
downs regardless. And it is something that it has taken me also a long time to appreciate that that's how it is.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
have many of us, or perhaps it is part of human nature. We have this impatient element that we
Yes.
want to. We put in the work, we do this, we do that, and we expect the result to happen according to how we read that it should happen or how we have imagined it, but it doesn't go like
Yeah.
that. So that is also my
Yeah.
own personal experience, that it takes time. And
Yeah.
the interesting, and you use the word battle that happens between the head and the heart, if you want, the the higher
Yeah.
self, is that
Hmm.
when you put in efforts and you don't see the result or the outcome that you were imagining because you thought it would
Yeah.
happen quickly, then your mind will increase, shall we say, the volume of the
Yes.
negative
Yes.
or the protective talk, and then you will have more of the imposter syndrome, and you will have things like,
Yeah.
yeah, you haven't succeeded yet because you're not really doing something much, and that's why, what are you doing? And this
Yeah.
self-doubt is can I think it's always there. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if it is something we can do to switch it off, but that's really the beauty of it, is to be able to observe it and not be
Hmm.
carried away by
Yeah.
it. And when you feel like impostor, uh, you know, stand up or appear and do what
Yeah.
you said that you would do, regardless of these thoughts. I feel that what helps me personally with this battle. I'm using again the word battle as you said it.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it is a
I
battle
think it
of
is. Yeah,
you.
it is. It
Yeah.
sometimes it is a
Yeah.
lot. uh,
Yeah.
what what I find that helps me personally, and well, there are quite a few things. One that comes to mind for sure is the trust, the belief that this is the right thing, and when the time
Yeah.
is right, it will happen. And that is more has to do, with a sense of trust, self trust, but also trust in a higher power, in
Hmm.
some guidance in our life, that our life is not a random patch of actions. There is
Yeah.
a purpose or a design, if you want, behind it. So having trust that this is happening beautifully as it should be,
Yeah.
that really helps me really tip the battle and have that imposter voice quietened
Yeah.
when that happens. And there is another thing that I believe it's very big and happens with anyone that practices something, some solution, some effort, some whatever it is, consistently. And so what happens
Yes.
is you pick up momentum. So if you
Hmm.
have, uh, let's say, I'm trying to give an example. I will give an example similar to you were saying about the public speaking, going the transition to public speaking. So if, let's say,
Yeah.
I build up a habit of speaking
Yeah.
a little bit every day, speaking, it could be, a video on social media or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be on a stage, but putting
Hmm.
yourself out there. If you do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row, then you start building
Yeah.
a momentum, and then it becomes easy to silence the impostor that presents themselves,
Yes.
because so I believe making habits out of our the things that we want to improve on, no matter how small, just
Hmm.
pick it up. The power of momentum is bigger than any of us, so it will take over
Yes.
once it accumulates enough, traction or momentum. So,
Yeah, I
yeah, these are
agree.
some things,
Uh,
Ken, for the battle between
yeah.
the.
No, I
Yeah.
agree 100%. I try to educate my audience as to what's happening. And I try to tell them that we're working with laws, um,
Mhm.
and the law of momentum. And so when you're moving from one law to the other, it takes time to navigate, and you have to. Take the example of a plane. You have this plane that is pretty heavy, but there's a couple of laws that is operating within that plane. Or that the first law is gravity, which keeps it stationary. And then there's this law of flight that it has to achieve in order to get up in the sky. It has to get to that level. Now, the only way it can get to that level is with some friction, isn't it? There's no other way. So it has to take off, and it has to run and run and run in that momentum. But the time between it sitting still and flying, that's the time you're talking about in your journey that you're walking with, that time. But if the plane stops, it's not going to go anywhere. And so I try to tell
Mm.
people you have to stay with the law, recognize that how you're operating is a law. And because it is a law, it will manifest regardless. So just stay, as you said, continue developing the habit. Continue developing the habit. The habit will cause you to become more trustworthy of yourself. You're going to believe yourself. You're going to start. This thing is about internal compasses being changed and perspective. And then one day, as you are practicing, if you will, you're going to have a revelation that I am. And at that space, I tell people life has just begun. And I tell, we had on the onset, there are a lot of people that listen, but there are very few people that are hearing, Doc. And now those are the
Mm.
ones that make the difference. The ones who have ears, let them hear. Because what it'll do, it is going to allow you to receive revelation. You're sitting in Anthony's place and you're listening, and then you made a crossover from listening to hearing. It dropped inside. Once it dropped inside, you owned it. It changed you. And so I always invite people to not just listen, but to hear, and to listen and hear yourself. That conversation, as you're talking, you're listening, but hear yourself. And when you do, life change. So here you are, Doc. You got yourself in, you're doing the personal growth, you're moving forward, you're learning, you jumped in both feet, you're chipping away at it, if you will, you're practicing and gaining your strength and your wisdom, your knowledge, and you have decided, okay, I'm ready to do something with all this information. Talk to us now as you're beginning to grow as a human spirit. That knowledge, the wisdom, you're pulling your wisdom from all the other sages out there. You're putting it on, you're adjusting it. You sat down with Tony, you grabbed his stuff, you're grabbing from other places that you're reading, and you're putting it on to fit that jacket, that custom made jacket, if you will. Talk to us as to some of those other teachers that you and sages that you're pulling from and gathering your information, because now once you've digested, you're going to regurgitate it with you in mind as the leader. Talk to us as you're gathering that information. Who were some of those sages that you sat under, and how did it begin to reposition your perspective from where you were?
Where do I start? uh,
Wherever you feel the leading to, that's where you go.
I will. I will start by mentioning that Tony Robbins was indeed the biggest catalyst in my personal journey, especially in
Yeah,
the early years of my transformation. It made a big impact on me. Uh,
yeah,
I will. There is another person that comes to mind that is more of a more current mentor or being influenced by very much, and that's Wim Hof, the Iceman. I have been doing
hmm,
his breathing and yoga practices for over a year now, in the cold
yeah,
exposure, and it is something that it gives me a different level of energy, of body, connecting with my body more and being more aware of the
yeah,
the intelligence, if you want, of the body.
yeah,
But you know what, when you first started articulating the question, Ken, my initial answer that came up to my mind was the vast majority of my podcast guests, because in my podcast personal
yeah.
development mastery, I am, now that we're recording this conversation, I'm in episode 312. So there is
Congratulations.
thank you. It is I love doing it. So it is it's my
Yeah,
mission, it's my calling to do so. That's why it comes naturally. But
yeah,
I have learned so much speaking with, it's about 200 people that I have spoken with over the years on my podcast,
yeah,
and
yeah.
asking the questions relevant to their field of expertise, of course, but questions that were
Hmm,
mostly my questions, my queries about life or about their topic. And I have gained, in such a vast, so many different vast topics, I have gained understandings and insights and have implemented habits as a result, because I think that's really the most useful thing, and it's what you were saying, from
yeah,
listening to hearing, because you can listen to something
yeah,
and then you forget about it, and maybe it entertained
yeah,
you for a few minutes, but there was no
yeah,
transformation that happened. And I think with podcasts like yours or mine, or with these conversations, the point is not entertainment. I mean, it's a nice
yeah,
if someone is entertained as well, but that's not why we're
yeah,
doing this conversation. It's to
yeah.
ignite that seed of change, of positive change, to
Yes,
inspire some action as a result of the conversation. And
yeah,
uh, to answer your question about what I have realized, is that these 200 people that I gained all these insights and knowledge, it is just by having them out there in a podcast
yeah,
catalog is not good enough,
yeah,
because no one has the time to listen to 300 podcasts in order to gain that insight. So my
yeah,
efforts have already started via the podcast, carrying on with a book that I am almost ready to publish. It's almost ready, but all of them, these efforts, are coming from my desire to distill that
yeah,
wisdom, what I picked from 300 episodes, and put them into short, implementable chunks of wisdom, but practical wisdom, not theories, not all right, this is a
yes,
beautiful
yes,
theoretic concept, I enjoyed reading it. It's all,
yeah,
and that is my intention. It's a matter of inspiring the reader or the listener, in the case of the podcast, to take some kind of action as a result, because they will hear, a part of them will resonate with the message,
yeah,
and they would say, that sounds good. Let me do that tomorrow
yeah,
and see what happens. I think that, or that is sometimes I feel like it is a duty that it was given to me,
Yeah,
because I have, there is
yeah,
all that knowledge there, but part of my role is to distill it, to present it in a way that actually makes a difference in someone's life, rather than just, a conversation, no matter
yeah.
how interesting it is.
I agree with you.
Uh,
It's important to. I I feel my mission is just like yours, and I love that you had discussed it because it's beautiful. There is room for all. And we had talked earlier that each and every one of us, the billions of people that are on this planet, each one of us is has the opportunity to access all the wisdom out there, try it on, taste it, and then we can bring it into a format where we can serve and continue that cycle of life and learning because it is beautiful to be a servant and it you talk about the interviews. I have learned so much from the modern day sages that I tell people that are before me as we have this conversation. I personally have become so much more mature, if you will, than when the first day that I had that podcast. So talk to me, Doc. Here you are moving forward, you're gaining insights, and talk to us about this transition now that you're moving. Here's this dentist that uh, just relocated, going after different things. I know the family is probably whispering some wonderful things about you as well, that they're trying to pull you back as well. So you have all this stuff going into your life and in your life, and you decided now. Um, talk to us about that conversation about once you found your purpose. I tell people find your purpose because it makes you purposeful. When you found it, if you will, with the podcast, how did that come about? What was that story that happened to cause you to go out, get yourself a mic, put yourself out there? Because, it's a journey. What was that conversation like with you and others outside from you?
Hmm. Great question. Uh, Let me start by saying that, when you say found the purpose, I prefer, because finding something implies something specific, that something is in a position, in a place, and you find it.
Hmm.
So, uh,
Oh, it's been
with
with
purpose,
you. It's always there. Yeah.
it is from, I believe we create our purpose. It is ongoing. We create it like we compose a song. That's how the purpose is not, a static thing like a rock, and oh, I found the purpose and now I'm sitting on top of
Hmm.
the rock. It is something flowing and
Yeah.
changing, I believe. uh,
Yeah.
with the podcast, initially, when I started my first podcast, this I have now is my second podcast. The first podcast, it was born out of curiosity. Mainly it was something intriguing. It
Hmm.
was when I had started doing my speaking and realizing that, oh, this is
Yeah.
fun, so people do listen to me. So let me explore that. So it was like, I like the phrase, joyous exploration. It was something like that. I
Yeah.
felt, oh, this is a great hobby. Very quickly, when I started recording it, I realized that, whoa, there's more to it than just a hobby, and I knew that, Ken, because I was energized. I mean, I would have a
Yeah.
conversation, or do a record on the podcast, and then I would be buzzing the rest of the day. And I thought, okay, there is something here. I mean, I don't, how is it that I feel like that? So I know now that this is called, enthusiasm. And I'm sure you know enthusiasm is the Greek word that is derived from, means the spirit within. So something within the
Yeah.
spirit, or comes about. So that's why you have this
Yeah.
this feeling. So yeah, so from curiosity from doing something as a hobby, it very soon turned into a passion. And
Yeah.
then I always used to do one episode a week. And then when the lockdown started happening in March 2020, I found myself locked inside
Hmm.
my home along with billions of other people for some reason. So anyway, I won't go into that. What happened was that I found I had so much more time. So I decided
Yeah.
that time, okay, and because it is a very unique moment in humanity, this has never happened before.
Yes.
Let's put 2 episodes out every week. I have the time, and that was a turning point for me because 2 episodes a week really, in a way, well, it doubled the momentum and the traction. It
Yeah.
also increased
Hmm.
the amount of time I needed to spend in order to do that. And
Yeah.
that's when it started crystallizing more like a mission that this is something I have to do, and not have to in the
Yeah. Yeah.
sense that I'm obliged by, but have to do
Yeah.
coming from an inner desire or an inner duty, as if you want, like
Yeah.
a moral obligation, something like that. So that's how
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
have a friend of
yeah,
mine that
here we
says,
are 3 years afterwards, still doing 2 episodes a week and, enjoying it. And it's a
nice.
huge commitment, Ken. It's a huge
Yeah.
commitment, but I love doing it. It comes from within,
Yeah.
and it comes from a place of service, as you were saying, and,
Yeah.
hoping to make a difference and improve someone's
Yeah.
life, to inspire positive change.
Yeah. I, I I had a friend. I have a friend of mine, and she said we have to learn how to allow our gift to um, for us to be used by our gift. And so, which is really an interesting way to look at things. But I, with mine, was similar with yours. It started just before, and I had my book written down. So there were 10 chapters, and so I did 10 episodes, and I knew that the next stage of my podcast was for me to step out beyond that and to go and start interviewing people. And one of the things that I had to deal with was that I was horrified of doing that. I have no idea
Mm.
why, because I've done I know why. I knew that it would open me up and that I would have to have a conversation, a real conversation. And you can't, in a situation like this with this exchange, you cannot be sincere. You have to be truthful. You have to be honest. You have to be honorable. And I knew that you have to open yourself to be vulnerable in this space. And I was very nervous about that. And the podcast took off. And I remember I called my brother up because that was safe space. I'm like, "You're my first guest." So he did. I turned it into 2 episodes because I was like, I can't do this. And all this time, I'm dealing with this anxiety and all the different things to make the next move. I brought another friend of
Mhm.
mine, staying safe. After that, my world stopped because this thing kept rising more and more. I had shut down the podcast because of that. I had to deal with this. This was a personal thing that I had to go through. And I remember one day um, dealing with this in my meditation, and the thought came to me as to um, this is what I've always wanted. Uh, you've called this in, and your blessing and all that you are wanting is right behind this decision. And when I
Mm.
saw that, and the fact that what was I wanting? I wanted to have conversation with people to help others out of their pain, so that they, number one, you mentioned it, you're not alone. Number one is the one thing I wanted people to get was you're not alone. There are other people that have gone through and made it out. And here they are. So we're going to talk to them how they get out. And that's what I was telling you. We want to know, how did you do it? Because my hope is that they will get it and know that they're not by themselves. And so we all have to do this journey. And now that I am here, it is something that makes me, it gives me life, if you will. It takes me deeper into me, and it allows me to meet those like yourself that are who have been touched through life and pain and is awake to servanthood. And so it's a great place to be. But yeah, I had to go through mine as well. And when I came back into the podcast, all the people were still there, one, and they were asking me what happened and stuff like that. So
Mm.
it was really fascinating that this platform is here. And so I know exactly, Doc, what you go through and the joy that it brings and so forth. So talk to us, Doc, as you're sitting there. You have one of your interview and you are being, brought in and you're having this wonderful exchange. Talk to me, because I've had them, and that's why I wanted to bring you to it, where you're sitting there and you're having this exchange, and lights are going off within you as you're hearing this conversation, and they're expounding deeper, and you began to open, and something dropped in, as you said, you heard, and it changed your life because you mentioned that you use some of these things to assist you. Talk to us as to one of those encounters, if you will, that you can remember that exchange dropped in and you heard it.
Sure. The one that comes to mind right now was, when we have, and that's again something very actionable as an insight. From time to time, each of us has these moments of gratitude. When something happens and we
Mm-hmm.
realize, or we have this deep connection within, and sometimes, they are accompanied by tears. So
Tears, yeah,
tears, so that moment, when something happens, something beautiful happens, or not so beautiful, it doesn't matter, but we have that moment of, gratitude. The insight was, when that happens, write it down. Have a
yeah,
page in your journal or somewhere to write it down, so you can refer back to it, because these are
yeah,
precious moments. And if we don't write them down, chances are we'll forget about them, and they will get lost, and maybe the beauty behind them. So
yeah.
that's something practical I learned there, Ken, to write down the moments of gratitude, of tears of gratitude.
Yeah, it is. I remember interviewing this lady about gratitude, and she had the revelation of that, and with her travels, and as she began to expound on her revelation, it changed my life in a sense where I recognize um, that we need to stop, and because we get busy, you're running around, and she taught me how to stop and to allow the the energy, the feeling of that moment that you talked about, because we sometimes, you said we even have to stop and to write it down. I think that's a necessary thing, to write it down so we don't lose it, and also once you wrote it down, to go back in and dance and be bathed with that energy, that energy of gratitude, and allow yourself to experience it. And when I did that, I tell people, when you start experiencing that aspect of yourself, and as an individual, as you become more gracious and gratitude and thankful of where you are and what you have, things begin to change in your life. Begin to call, uh, as we said, momentum, different types of momentum into your life that will propel you into where you want to go. Uh, Doc, this has been such a good conversation, just getting to extract from you your journey. And I know we didn't even get a chance to go in all the ways as to how the tools that you use. I know you mentioned some of them, yoga, which I tell people. Yoga is a form of meditation. Meditation is important in the sense it allows you to slow your thoughts down and choose. And that breath, I tell people, the breath in meditation is the bridge between the natural and the supernatural. And you hear people are learning and teaching you how to take that breath. There are different types of fire breaths and all these other things that one would learn. But that is a bridge that ushers you in, and it gives you the ability to slow your thoughts and become powerful designers. You choose which one you want to manifest and give birth. And let it become a habit, as Doc said. You choose which one you are going to make a habit, and I trust that your life will change. You guys have been listening to Doc and I have this conversation. I'm going to provide everything for you to get to him because I want you to get to him. He has his podcast, Masters, what is it, Doc? Personal Development
Personal development
Mastery
mastery.
Podcast. I want you to get there, guys, get in his space because there are others that are here on the stage, if you will, that have other insights that we are all tapping into. And it is our hope that you will learn and become um, open to growing and having that information change your life because we want to have you on a podcast interviewing people saying, I heard this conversation and it changed my life. So tell the people one more time, Doc, some of the things. I know you have the book. When is it out now?
Soon. I don't have a date yet, but it's going to be soon, Ken.
Okay.
Very,
Okay.
very
When
soon.
it comes out, we're going to also add that to our location and tell them that it is
Sure.
here. So this is um, a beautiful conversation that I've had. And I want to thank you so much, Doc, for coming and sharing your journey, your wisdom, all of it that you have given us an opportunity to become better human spirits by your knowledge and your walk on this planet. Thank you so much again for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you very much, Ken. It was a real pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.